didn't sleep the night before. Not because I was scared, because I had already made my decision. And once I make a decision, I don't second guess it. I just execute. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I spent 11 years building something from nothing. And in the span of one Tuesday afternoon, I almost lost all of it to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I'm 31. I work in forensic accounting. My job, literally, is to find the money people try to hide. I trace it through shell companies, through falsified records, through carefully constructed lies that almost look like the truth. I'm good at it. I've been doing it since I was 23, when a senior partner looked at a discrepancy I'd flagged in a set of financials and said, "You have a gift for seeing what people don't want you to see." He meant it as a compliment. He had no idea how young I'd started practicing. My brother's name is Owen. He's 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, he has been the sun that my parents orbit around. Not because he's exceptional. Not because he worked harder or loved deeper or gave more. Owen is the sun in our family because he learned early that if you act helpless enough, people will carry you. And my parents, my mother especially, were built to carry. Growing up, I watched Owen fail upward. Failed out of his first college, and my parents paid for a second one. Crashed his car twice, and my father bought him a third. Lost a job, moved back home at 27, lost another job, borrowed money he never returned. And every time, my mother would smooth it over with the same sentence, "He's trying." You have to give him credit for trying. I stopped asking what exactly he was trying to do sometime around my sophomore year of high school. What I did instead was leave, not dramatically. I just got quiet, got focused, got out. I earned a scholarship. I put myself through grad school on a combination of loans, TA stipends, and working 30 hours a week at a firm downtown. By 26, I had my CPA. By 28, I had a salary that would have made my father's eyes water if I'd ever told him what it was, which I didn't. I also bought a condo, a real one. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, in a neighborhood that had been up and coming for a decade and had finally arrived. I paid 20% down. I refinanced at the right time. The thing was mine, clean, no co-signers, no family money anywhere near it. That was the first mistake I made, telling them. I don't know why I told them. Maybe I still wanted them to be proud of me in the way they were proud of Owen when he did nothing at all. Maybe I was just tired of pretending I didn't exist financially. Either way, I mentioned the condo at Christmas dinner 3 years ago, and I watched something shift in my mother's eyes. Not pride, calculation. I didn't recognize it then. I do now, Eck. The call that changed everything came on a Wednesday morning in March. I was at my desk, second cup of coffee, halfway through a reconciliation that wasn't adding up. My phone lit up with my mother's name and I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. She was crying before she even said hello. My mother is a skilled crier. I say that not to be cruel, but to be accurate. She can produce tears on a timeline that would make a film actor envious, and she has spent 40 years using them to manage outcomes. I used to feel guilty when she cried. I used to scramble to fix whatever I'd supposedly caused. That morning, I listened. Owen, she said, was in serious trouble. He'd gotten involved with some people she wouldn't name, borrowed money she wouldn't specify an amount for, and now those people were threatening him. Threatening the family. She used the word dangerous. She used the phrase, "We're scared." I asked how much. $60,000? I asked whose name the debt was in. She paused just a beat too long before she said, "Does it really matter right now?" "It matters," I said. "It always matters whose name is on a debt." She moved on without answering. She told me that my father had a plan, that they wanted to sit down with me that weekend, that it was a family situation and family handled things together. She said, "We love you." She said, "We need you." She hung up before I could ask any more questions. I sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then I pulled up my credit report. This is the part where my training stopped being theoretical and became very, very personal. There were 2 accounts I didn't recognize. One was a personal loan opened 8 months prior. The other was a credit card with a $12,000 limit nearly maxed out. Both had my social security number attached to them. Both had a mailing address I had never lived at, my mother's address. I have a particular feeling when I find something like this in a client's file. It's not anger exactly. It's more like a door opening onto a very cold room. Everything gets precise. Everything gets quiet. I felt that now, except it was my own file, and the people on the other side of it were my parents. I did not call them back. I did not cry. I opened a new spreadsheet and I started working. Within 48 hours, I had a complete picture. The personal loan was for $22,500. It had been opened using my SSN, a copy of my pay stubs. I still don't know how they got those, and I have a few theories I don't like. And my mother's address listed as mine. The credit card had been opened 6 months later, probably when the loan wasn't enough. Together, the accounts had funneled just over $30,000 somewhere. I traced what I could. Some of it went toward Owen's truck payment. Some went to a bank account I didn't recognize. Some of it was just gone. They had used my name to fund my brother's life. I'm going to say that again because it took me a few hours to fully absorb it. My parents had committed identity fraud against me. Federally prosecutable identity fraud. The kind of thing I flag in corporate cases and hand off to the FBI. Except this was my mother. And my father. And Owen, who probably knew, and who had certainly benefited. I made an appointment with an attorney that same afternoon. I did not report to the credit bureaus yet. Not because I was protecting them, but because I wanted to know the full scope before I moved. My attorney agreed. She also said very calmly, "You understand you have the right to press charges." I said I understood. I didn't make any decisions yet. I just kept working. The weekend family meeting was scheduled for Sunday lunch. My mother had texted me the details. Her house, noon. She was making pot roast, as though food could soften what was about to happen. I showed up. I brought nothing. I wore the blazer I wear when I'm about to walk into a room I intend to control. My father was sitting at the head of the table, already. Owen was there, leaning back in his chair with the specific energy of someone who expects to be accommodated. My mother was in the kitchen. She came out when she heard me, hugged me too long, called me sweetheart twice. We sat down. She served the food. We talked about nothing for about 7 minutes. The weather, a neighbor's new fence, whether the pot roast needed more salt. And then my father set down his fork and looked at me. "We need to talk about Owen's situation," he said. I nodded. I took a sip of water. I waited. He laid it out with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed this. Owen had made some bad decisions. Some people were owed money. The family needed to come together. I had resources. He actually used the word resources, and it was time for me to use them for something that mattered. He quoted a number, $60,000. He said I could refinance my condo to access the equity, or I could take out a personal loan, or I could liquidate some of my retirement contributions. He said this like it was nothing, like he was suggesting I return a library book. My mother nodded along the entire time like a woman at church. Owen looked at the table. I let my father finish. I let the silence sit for a moment after. Then I said, "I'm not going to do any of that." The temperature in the room changed immediately. My father's jaw tightened. He said they weren't asking, they were telling. He said I had an obligation to this family. He said Owen had sacrificed things for me. And here Owen looked up, briefly, like he was waiting for his cue. And I owed it to all of them to step up. I asked Owen what exactly he had sacrificed. He launched into it. There was a story. There's always a story. About a time when I was 19 and we were in a parking lot somewhere, and some men had approached us and Owen had stepped between me and them and had been hurt defending me. He told this story with a level of conviction that I will admit impressed me. He had been telling it long enough that maybe he believed it now. I remembered that night differently. I remembered Owen shoving me toward those men and running. I remembered that I was the one who'd stood there while they laughed at me and eventually walked away. I remembered getting home and my hand shaking, and Owen already being inside, watching TV, not asking if I was okay. But I didn't say any of that then. I let him finish his story. I nodded. "That sounds really difficult," I said. Owen relaxed. My mother reached across the table and touched his hand. Then my father leaned forward and said, "So you understand. This is what you owe us." And something in me, some last thread of hoping this was a misunderstanding, hoping they didn't know about the fraud, hoping they were just misguided rather than deliberate. That thread cut itself clean. "Dad," I said, "I already know about the accounts." The sound that followed was specific. It wasn't silence exactly. It was the sound of 3 people recalibrating simultaneously. My mother set down her fork. Owen looked at the window. My father said, "What accounts?" Not a question, a test. "The personal loan in my name," I said. "The credit card in my name." The $30,000 that moved through those accounts over the past 8 months. I kept my voice level. I had practiced this. I know about all of it. My mother started crying. On schedule, right on schedule. We didn't have a choice, she said. We were scared for Owen. We were scared for all of us. You have so much and he has nothing, and we thought, you thought I wouldn't check, I said. She flinched. Good. My father's energy shifted. He stopped being the reasonable patriarch and became something harder. He said that what they'd done was a family matter, handled within the family, and that I was not going to make this into something it wasn't. I said it was already something. Legally, it already was something. His voice dropped. He said I needed to be careful about the kinds of threats I was making. He said that family didn't do this to each other. He said if I went outside the family with this, there would be consequences for me too, that I'd lose my brother, lose my parents, lose everything that mattered. You should think very carefully, he said, about what you actually have at stake here. I looked at him for a moment. I have thought about it, I said, very carefully. For the past 11 days, actually. Here's what I had done in those 11 days. I had documented everything. I had the credit report pulls with timestamps. I had the account opening dates and the associated IP addresses that my attorney had helped me subpoena. I had records of the payments that had flowed out of those accounts and where they'd landed. I had a paper trail that would make a jury cry, and not in the sympathetic way. I had also called my condo's listing agent on day 3. The market in my neighborhood had been doing what markets do in neighborhoods that have arrived. It was moving fast. My agent told me she had a cash investor who'd been asking about units in my building for months. I said I might be interested in a conversation. That conversation became an offer. That offer became a signed contract. That contract closed in 9 days. Cash deals move quickly when everyone is motivated. And on the morning of that Sunday lunch, the deed to my condo had already transferred. My father had been preparing to suggest I refinance a property I no longer owned. I reached into my bag and I placed a single piece of paper on the table. It was a photocopy of the closing statement. The sale price was on the front page. I watched my father pick it up. I watched him read the number. I watched his face do something I had never seen it do before, which was go completely blank. The condo is sold, I said. It closed Friday. The equity is in a cashier's check in my account, and that account is in a bank you have no information about, and the address on file with that bank is not any address you have ever known for me. My mother had stopped crying. Owen was very still. I'm not refinancing anything, I said. I'm not paying Owen's debt. I'm not liquidating my retirement. And I'm not sitting here and pretending that what you did to my credit was a family decision made out of love. My father stood up. He was a big man, and he used his size the way he always had, to occupy more space than he was entitled to. He told me I was not leaving until we resolved this. He walked to the kitchen doorway, the only exit I'd been sitting near, and he put his hand on the frame. Sit back down, he said. I looked at him. I reached into my pocket and I held up my phone, screen facing outward. The call timer read 23:14. I had dialed 911 before I walked into the house. The call had been open the entire lunch. The dispatcher can hear everything you just said, I said, including the part about consequences, including what you're doing right now. My father's hand dropped from the door frame. The dispatcher's voice came through the phone, small and clear and professional, asking if I needed assistance. Not yet, I said, but please stay on the line. I drove to my sister-in-law's house that afternoon. Not Owen's wife. Owen wasn't capable of maintaining a marriage. But my cousin, who was the closest thing I had to a sibling who actually functioned. She made me tea and didn't ask questions until I was ready, and when I told her everything she was quiet for a long time. What are you going to do? She asked. I told her I had already done most of it. The credit bureau disputes were filed the next morning. The fraud alerts were active. My attorney had the documentation ready if I chose to go further. I had moved everything. Savings, retirement accounts, the proceeds from the sale, to accounts my parents had no knowledge of, at institutions I had never mentioned to them. I had also changed my number. I did this before I walked into that Sunday lunch, actually. The number my parents had for me was already dead by the time my mother called me sweetheart. What I chose not to do was press charges. This was not forgiveness. I want to be very precise about that. I chose not to press charges because my attorney and I decided that the civil route, the dispute process, the fraud flags on their own credit if they tried to do this again, the documented record that now existed, was sufficient for my purposes. My purpose was not to punish them. My purpose was to be free of them. There is a difference. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the apartment I'd been renting for 2 months. I'd found it quietly, paid first and last in cash, put a different name on the utility accounts at first until the lease was formal, and my laptop was open to my credit report. The fraudulent accounts were under dispute. My score had already started recovering. The cash from the sale was sitting in a high-yield account, compounding quietly, doing exactly what money does when no one is taking it from you. I opened my bank's app. I looked at the balance. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place with my name on it. Not because I had suddenly become wealthy, but because for the first time in my adult life, no one had a hand in it. No one was asking. No one was pulling. My phone had new contacts and a number that Owen didn't have. My email had a filter that sent anything from my parents' addresses directly to a folder I had named, very boringly, Archive. I had not looked at it. I was not going to look at it today. Outside the window, it was getting dark earlier. Fall was coming in fast. I could hear someone cooking in the apartment above me, something with garlic, something that smelled like a home that belonged to them. I thought about my condo. I missed it, a little. The second floor view, the way the light came in on Saturday mornings. But I had also bought that condo partly to show them something, to prove something to people who were never actually watching me in the first place. They were watching Owen. They were always watching Owen. The new place was just for me. I closed the app. I made myself dinner. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I wasn't calculating risk or running numbers on what someone might do next. I was just done. I don't know if Owen ever paid his debt. I don't know if those people came to my parents' house, or if they worked something out, or if the whole thing dissolved the way Owen's problems usually dissolve, which is slowly and at someone else's expense. I don't know, and I realized that night, standing at my stove with a pan of something simple on a burner that was mine, that I genuinely didn't need to. The debt I had been paying my entire life, the debt of being the capable one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need anything, the one who would always be fine, that debt I had finally canceled. Not because they asked me to, because I decided I was done carrying it. And when I made that decision, I didn't waver. I didn't look back. I didn't give anyone the chance to talk me out of it. I just executed. People ask me sometimes, not often, because I don't talk about this with many people, whether I regret not pressing charges, whether I let them off too easy, whether the clean ending I chose was really justice or just me being conflict averse. In a more sophisticated way than usual, I've thought about it, I'd sat with it, and what I keep coming back to is this. The consequences were already in motion the moment I filed the disputes. My parents now have a documented record of identity fraud attached to their names. If they ever try something like this again, with me, with anyone, that record exists. It doesn't disappear because I chose not to go further. I didn't forgive the debt. I just decided that a courtroom wasn't the place I wanted to spend the next 2 years of my life. There's a version of me that would have made a different call. The version of me that was still trying to make them see, still trying to be understood. That version would have pressed charges because she needed the validation of a verdict, needed someone in a position of authority to say yes, what they did was wrong. I understand that impulse. I lived inside it for a long time. But here's what I know now, in a way I didn't know it at 23 or 25 or even 29. The people who use you don't change because you expose them. Owen heard the truth about that parking lot a dozen times in his own head and built a different story anyway. My mother knew exactly what she was doing when she opened that loan in my name and still cried at the table like she was the injured party. My father blocked a doorway and called it protecting the family. These are not people who were waiting for the right argument to become different. They were not one confrontation away from an epiphany. What actually changes things, the only thing that actually changes things, is what you do with yourself afterward. The choices you make when no one is watching. The accounts you open quietly. The apartment you furnish slowly, one piece at a time, with money that belongs entirely to you. The Sunday mornings when you wake up and there is no one to manage, no one to placate, no debt hanging over the week before it's even started. I built the life I have through a specific combination of stubbornness and attention to detail. Those two things also saved me when my family tried to dismantle it. That's not luck. That's the direct result of years of choosing, again and again, to be someone who pays attention and doesn't look away from uncomfortable numbers. Owen never developed that. Not because he couldn't, but because he never had to. Every time the numbers got uncomfortable, someone else looked away for him. That's not a character flaw you're born with. It's one you're handed, slowly, by people who think they're helping. I don't say that to excuse him. I say it because understanding how something happens is different from accepting that it should keep happening. The debt I finally canceled wasn't the $30,000. It was the belief that my worth to my family was tied to my willingness to absorb their problems. I'd been paying into that belief since I was a teenager, and the return on investment was a fraudulent loan and a Sunday lunch designed to take the rest. I'm done investing in things that don't build anything. The balance in my account now reflects that. So does the quiet,